Just making sure these guys are ready. Okay. I will call the meeting to order. So first off, any changes to the agenda, additions or deletions? Councillor King.
I just need to add personnel under our end camera.
Okay. Anything else? Motion to accept the agenda as amended. Thank you, Councillor Brandel. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Okay, we will jump into first. This looks different than the one I had before. Okay. Yeah, well, no, but on the other one, when I was looking at the other day, this usually shows up as delegations, and now it goes in our CMP verbal update. So I get confused there. That's so fine. CEO update, Gary, take it away, please.
Thank you and good evening. Couple things. I know the CEO update has been circulated. Couple highlights. First off, there were 3 health and safety incidents reported in the last month. 2 involving injuries, 1 involving a third-party vehicle damage. 1 new business license was issued. We've also have received information saying that our gas tax fund is actually of a higher amount, $380,000 more than what was expected. And so our finance director will look at that as part of our 2022 budgeting cycle. We filed grant applications for a number of other grants, which include some of the funding potentially that could be used for the community downtown revitalization projects. I'm going to jump down to and make mention of our payroll. Payroll has been assisting our human resources staff while there's someone has been away there. And I just wanted to recognize payroll for their efforts in that area, as it's been significant work in this past while around that. And I know that our clerk has been working really hard in that area. Next area to highlight is in the projects, Glory Land Road project. The asphalt work is all completed, and the landscaping is beginning this week. We received some better news around the fire hall internet connection, and that TELUS is now proposing a shorter route to run the fiber optic line to the fire hall, which is significant cost savings. It's price is dropping from about 100,000 to about 30,000 for that project. So that's a significant cost saving there.
It's nothing but good news tonight here.
That's a good news, yeah. And then there's trail work will be starting behind the church and mosque area in the southeast to relocate the trail that has been undercut by the creek bank. And that should be starting later this week. Staff have been involved with the various organizers of the All-In event to be working through our plans for that. We've also had some meetings with Big Fish Bay and looking at ways to improve public access. So that's still in the works. We're still working on that, but I just wanted to let council know that we're still looking at that. Fire department had 6 calls for service last week, bringing their total to 292 for the year. And in July, our peace officers had 73 in file investigations again. Again, that's up from previous years. August so far, there's been 14 files. So they're certainly keeping busy. As well in July or towards the end of July, both officers completed a course called the Law Enforcement Bike Association course, which is training on their bike patrols, get better, enabling them to have better skills to be able to perform the bike patrol piece. In terms of aquatics, they've been working on a number of courses to help train lifeguards. The last stage is the National Life Saving course that's running this week. So hopefully we'll have some potential junior guard candidates that will come out of that course. In terms of our facilities, ice is being installed in Arena 1 as we speak. Should be wrapped up in the next couple of days. Flooring replacement in terms of the skate tile and the back hallway and the change rooms has been completed. So we're essentially getting our arena ready for ice season. We've also had found a solution to having a vacancy with our program coordinator when we move some people and some tasks around, and being able to looking at hiring a temporary rec assistant to perform some other tasks as a creative way to be able to fill those roles and still be able to provide services to our community, as we were struggling to recruit for that program coordinator role. And then if you look at the upcoming events, there's quite a list there, and there's a lot happening in our community over the next month. And so it's we're definitely getting really busy as far as activities go in the community services world. Be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, questions, comments from council? Councillor King.
Christina might be able to answer this one for me. Taxes in arrears, we send letters out. Are they registered letters, and do we follow up with phone calls or? They are, okay, perfect. Just want to make sure we're not sending just a letter and hoping they get it.
Yeah, and then in each message, we also call to speak with them. Email, a lot of them are sent by email.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Brandel.
So we spend a lot of time talking about sidewalks on this table, and we also spend a lot of time talking about grass cutting. But what we don't talk about, and what I brought up a couple of years ago, is edging along people's sidewalks for personal, because sometimes, like I do a lot of walking in the summertime, and on some sidewalks, and that includes the town of Slave Lake sidewalks, they get so narrow with the overgrowth that you can't even walk on them. I've taken some pictures I can send you, Gary, that like, especially on Main Street in front of the building that was demolished right by Slave Lake Dental, like there's this much sidewalk, and it's all overgrowth and weeds in the middle. So for people with, wheelchair chairs and baby strollers, that would be pretty tough. And, I struggle with people doing it on their own. My husband is meticulous on that and make sure that ours is done because he complains about it all the time. But, if we're going to start enforcing that for residents to do, we should look at our own house and do that too. So maybe if we can put that in the budget and look at that for next year and tackle that right in the spring.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll take a look at that.
Awesome.
Okay, Councillor King.
Maybe Jill can answer this one. I read in the Fcss update that there's a SLAM wellness weekend. What is the acronym for SLAM?
So SLAM is the Slave Lake and Area Mental Health Network. Perfect.
Thank you. And I had one more, if there was any estimation on the timeline for the parts for Barton Park to come in.
Last conversation with the contractors, they were talking about mid-August, but we're still waiting on the part piece, right? So there's pieces are being manufactured specifically for that playground. To be able to do the soft pour, we have temperature parameters that we need to have it in. So I've been certainly trying to do our best to keep it going. Make sure it happens this year.
So no estimate on when the parts are going to come in?
I don't have an exact date, no.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I had one, Gary. I brought up back in June, and I know administration is bringing forward a report on the DC Auto building there along the highway. But I had mentioned at the time there was people that are basically just driving through there and just going in onto 8th Street. So we talked about putting up concrete boulevards there or something to limit that access. But it's been 6 weeks and we haven't done anything. So I'm just curious if there's a reason why we can't, or if something's happening there. So I don't expect an answer on that, but I'll leave it with you to follow up.
Yeah, I will follow up. I know there's been some internal conversations with that, but we need to
appreciate that. Okay, as I see nothing else, we will jump into the rest of the agenda. So our first one, RCMP verbal update, Staff Sergeant Don Reset. If you want to come forward, Joanna will turn on that mic. We encourage you to use it. You gave us lots and lots of paper, Don, so you gotta, we like coloring sheets, but you gotta tell us which one to start with.
I'm sorry, I don't, thank you, Mayor Warman and Councilor for allowing me to come and speak today, but I don't have that in front of me. If I could get a copy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, well, I will give you a copy. I just wasn't sure if this was something you're going over, so I didn't know where I'd start with.
No, I was kind of caught off guard on the reason for my attendance was something to do with, I don't want to call it the homeless camps. I refer to it as the tent cities within our community.
Okay.
So I'll give you a brief update so far about the RSMP staffing, where we are with our staffing needs. So we're still waiting for one of our positions, the operations NCO position, to be filled. The closing date was June 5th, and that process is moving along fairly smoothly, is what I'm being told from our higher ups. There's been candidates selected and they're just going through the hiring process. So it looks positive, and hopefully we'll have an answer here fairly soon, hopefully by September, I'm hoping, and have that position filled. We are a corporal GIS position short right now. And therefore, what I've done is I put a pool for 2 corporals position, hoping that maybe perhaps one of our corporals will get promoted to the sergeant's position, freeing up another corporal's position. So in a pool position, when you advertise for that, there's X amount of people that will apply. And then so we don't have to re-advertise. We can select if something should happen that the corporal get promoted to that position, then we can just select. If there's 2 people apply for that position, then we just fill those 2 positions. We don't have to go back and advertise. So that's what it looks like right now. And we're still waiting for validations and whatnot as well in those 2 positions. We have a vacancy right now because we have a person on long-term off-duty sick. We have a person that's going to be filling that position. So staffing has granted us another person from the training academy to come here and fill that position. We suspect his arrival will be sometime in September. He graduates 8th of September and he'll be here. He has accommodation secured already, and he's very motivated and positive to come into Slave Lake. He brings a lot of qualities with him. I spoke to him. He's, like I say, he's very motivated and very excited to come into Slave Lake. So I think that's huge for our community. As for calls for service in our community, it goes in spikes. Sometimes they go up, sometimes they go down. With the warmer weather, our calls were decreased for whatever reasons. Maybe people were hunkering down at the lake and whatnot and staying out of the community. Holidays are nearby and in full swing, so it takes a lot of people out of the community. But it goes up and down. So what we're noticing right now, we're seeing a lot of collisions on our highways, whether that's wildlife or just unsafe operation of motor vehicles. So we're seeing an increase in a lot of motor vehicle collisions, which is quite rare for this time of year. Usually in the winter, that's when our calls for collisions to go up because of the road conditions, weather conditions, and so forth. But that's where we are right now. We still are increasing our patrols, whether that's vehicle, mobile, foot patrols, and our bicycles. So we're focusing our efforts within our hotspot areas within the town of Slave Lake. And the MD has also put a request that they've had issues at the MD boat launch. So it's taken our resources to put in that area to deal with some of the issues they've been having. So we've increased our patrols in that area because they want presence as well. And we're the police force for the entire area. So we try and put our resources where we can. Having said that, we also put our impaired driving initiative in place where they come and we do check stops. And visibility is very key. I've heard it from council loud and clear. You want to see visibility. So we push our members on the road to be in visibility for the community. We do foot patrols downtown. We put them in the tent cities along the bear trails. But right now, because some of the trails are closed because there's bear activity, we need to be safe as well. Because if we're not safe, then who's going to do the policing, right? So at various times, like we have to shift our resources where we can, where the need is for policing. I want to talk about a new initiative that one of your employees that works in our office has come up with. And she came up with this idea all by herself. You know, she ran it by me, and of course I supported it. It's a great initiative. It's called positive ticketing. That's if a member is given a ticket, she's reached out to business owners, the CEO, David Kim, has really supported her in that initiative as well. So she went out to local businesses, gathered coupons like such as Slurpees from 7-Eleven, Dairy Queen, Alamo's Pizza, the movie theater, and a few other places. I hope I'm not forgetting anyone, but we try our best to get those organizations to commit to us by giving a ticket. So a little kudos to the people that are doing positive things. So that could be children. We're focusing on youth in our community because we want a positive interaction from the police to the youth so they feel comfortable talking to the police. It's not always enforcement. So when we see a child or a youth doing something positive in the community, such as safe biking, helping an elder, helping someone else, we step in, we have that conversation with them, we give them a positive ticket. So we give the ticket to them. Attached to that ticket is a free beverage or some kind of food that they can go and turn into these companies. And Alamo's Pizza is on board. They really appreciate it, as is Tim Hortons. Every community, every business owner in this town is really positive, and it's taken off like a prairie fire. I'd say we just started, and I'd say 10% of our tickets we've handed out so far it's just going to increase over the next little while in this town. And as we get into the winter months, we're going to probably go and take a little further by getting hot chocolate or something like that as well for the youth. And another note, Slave Lake Detachment is hosting, it's a birch tree ceremony. And this is part of the RCMP's vision of 150 in our Truth and Reconciliation program. So this birch tree represents the Cree people of our community, where they use this birch tree for so many ceremonial activities, as well as their other things that they use on a daily basis. So we thought it would be best to put this birch tree in our detachment. Initially, it was only supposed to be a small little ceremony, and it's gotten traction and it's getting bigger and bigger. So this is taking place on September 2nd at 1:00, and I will be giving invitations out to all the councillors to be there. We just got the invitations today, and I had other things on the go, so I just didn't have an opportunity to bring a bunch of invitations.
You know what, Don, don't panic about it. You gave one to me here, whatever else I gave to Joanna, and she'll scan and send to everyone and put it in their calendars.
Awesome. Thank you. Other than that, I know that you have some questions. If you want to talk about the policing committee report that I sent out to the mayor, we can talk about that.
Let's jump into another topic there, Don.
Sure.
So I appreciate you coming today, and I know that council had reached out because a couple of councillors were quite concerned and about some things that were going on in what you call tent city. So I guess I'd probably open the floor to some of them to share their thoughts, and then maybe you can let us know what you're seeing over there and how that works. Councillor King.
So my question for you, Don, is that there's been a lot of community members noticing that Tent City has grown, I'd say, over the last little while. I am glad you're not calling it a homeless camp, because it is not. Not at all. There's a lot of criminal activity going in there, which we're hearing about. When asked if they're reporting this, they're telling us, yes, they're reporting this to the RCMP. So I'm just wanting to make sure we're all on the same page. This stuff is getting reported. If there's a plan, if there's something we can do on our side to help alleviate this.
Okay. To the question regarding the tent cities, I think we have to look at a bigger picture here. Where are the tents? Where are these tents being established? Right? Are they on private property? If they're on private property, there's not a lot that we as the police can do. Second, if they're not on private property, is there a bylaw in place? regarding criminal activity. I can tell you I did the stats for the last 3 months, and we have received 0 calls regarding tent cities. So I don't know what type of criminal activity people are reporting to the counselors, because I know we're not getting that. We've increased our patrols in the tent cities. And on a side note, my spouse and I will deliver food and water from the Friendship Center to these camps and to other people on the street that are in dire need. Like when it's really, really hot, right? We provided water. We provided watermelon, a whole bunch of food to them. And, it's taken a little while, but I believe that we've made some inroads and some gain with them and some trust, which really is very, very important to them and to me, because I want them to trust us. When I talk to them about some, I've been in these tent cities, and for the most part, they're clean. As a matter of fact, I went to one today, and the person that was in there was actually sweeping the area and making it tidy. And I was there on an unrelated matter. I have tonight with me Leon Brule, who's at the back of the room, and he was in a tent at one time. So if you have any questions regarding that, he's prepared to answer some of your questions that you may have, because it's unfair of me to answer those questions relating to the tent city, because I'm not living there, right? But for the most part, they're very, very good. They're well maintained. And as of recent, where we closed down a residence and the fences around that property, it has evicted those people. So they have to go somewhere. Therefore, they erected tents. And that's where they're staying at currently. I think at this point, if we had a loved one on the street, I think we would want them looked after, just like anyone else would, right? So is there a criminal activity? I don't see it. And I've been there during the day, I've been there in the morning, and I've been there in the evening, and I don't see any of that stuff. So I'm not sure what type of criminal activity is you're referring to, or the community is referring to.
Mostly actually in behind Sawridge Estates is the ones I get a lot of phone calls about. But while you're speaking of it, I did read, because you're in these camps a lot, what is their thoughts, or maybe the gentleman can speak about a homeless shelter? Because reading, and I know you do talk to them a lot, are we just spinning our wheels, or is this something that they are looking for?
It's something they're looking for. Okay. And I propose that question to some of them when I speak to them.
I used to engage with them all the time, and I always got the answer, we're comfortable here. So I pulled away from a little bit now. So knowing that you speak to them, it's interesting. Like, are we spinning our wheels? Are we going in the right direction?
No, I think we are going in the right direction for a facility to house them in the winter, and perhaps maybe in the summer. They tell me there's a need. Okay. And if I can refer to Leon, if you wouldn't mind coming up, Leon, or sitting where you are and just explain, is there a need for homeless shelter?
Leon, if you don't mind and you're comfortable with it, I would love for you to come sit up and use the mic. Just because we record this and some of this, whatever, it'd be great for everyone to hear what you're saying.
So is there a need for a homeless shelter, Leon?
Yeah.
So Leon says, yes, there is. Leon's a very shy kind of guy.
I know Leon.
But I've known Leon since I've been here, and we've had some very positive interactions, Leon and I. And I actually asked Leon if he felt comfortable coming to answer some of your questions directed to the tent city, the homeless people, and is there a need for a homeless shelter?
So Leon, if you don't mind, where do you go in the winter?
MAT program.
So he goes to the MAT program.
To the MAT program? And when the MAT program is closed, or if there is no MAT program?
I go to my family.
You go to your families. And where is that?
Whitewater.
Whitewater.
So earlier tonight, I spoke to Leon about if he has a tent in the area. He said he's given that tent up to another friend of his because he's found some accommodations. So, you know, I believe that the people that are using tent cities help each other out. And they're just like any one of us. We would help each other out when the time comes, right?
Can we back up for a sec here and just elaborate, like visualize, when we're talking tent city, right? Like everybody's mind goes to what tent city actually is. And so I actually took it upon myself to go in and have a look there or whatever else. And city is probably not the right word here. So I went into the one that was on Sarge Estates land or whatever else. It's a couple of tarps set up and that's it. It's not this massive sprawling complex that you're visualizing in your head. So I know the other one is in behind Hotel Northern Star. We've got another one kind of adjacent to the Northern Lakes College. You know, are they similar in scale? Like how big are we talking? We're talking tent cities. Like what do people that aren't there, what do we visualize?
My apologies. So when I refer to tent city, I lump them all into one. So when I say tent city, I combine them all into one.
Right.
So currently we only have 3 areas that have tents in them. One is just south of the Northern Lakes College, and there's actually 3 tents in there. And it's well maintained. It's 2 people that were evicted out of this recent property that's been shut down for 90 days. They have nowhere else to go. They're resilient. All these people are very, very resilient. So they do what they have to do to make it comfortable for themselves. So that is the biggest area that's in the area right now is 3 tents. This morning when I went there, 1 tent is occupied by 2 people. Another tent just to the west of it is another 2 people. And a tent to the east of it, there was nobody in it. So I think these tents are only used when there's a need for them, like when they feel the need to go and conceal themselves from inclement weather, when it's raining and whatnot. The other area is on 6th Avenue on the west side behind, I call it West Tags, I guess, Sawridge Estates. There is a shelter there, and that houses anywhere from 4 to 5 people. Depending. This morning, there was only 2 people there, and it's well maintained. I don't see any criminal activity there, like I said. So that's another area. The problem with that, it's on Sawridge property. So it's not on town property, so we have an issue trying to remove that, right? As well as Northern Lakes College, that's on their property, right? The other tent is in behind, just south of the fire hall, if you will. It's a single lady that's living in that tent. She's kind of fallen on hard times and she calls it home. This tent was erected as kind of a little play shack for their child. But unfortunately, because of the circumstances, family, for whatever reason, split or whatever the case may be, and she's there currently. She's trying to get her way back home to her community, and like I said, she's just fallen on some hard times, and she's content right now just staying there and just doing what she has to do. So those are only the 3 areas that we have tents. So when I refer to tent city, I just lump them all into one, not necessarily a big area.
So when we have done like a large group, and like I get questions from all kinds of people and I don't know how to answer them. When there's a large group of 20 sitting in front of the college drinking on Main Street, and a constituent or a resident says to me, well, how come I can't go and sit with my friends and drink on Main Street and nothing to be done? So these are the kind of questions we get. And I mean, I don't know how to answer that because I know you guys are doing patrols. I know you guys are out there. And
Fair enough. That's a very fair question to ask. The problem is, yes, we can go and enforce it, right? Our approach is more of a soft approach to them. We ask them to dump their whatever they're drinking out, right? Because if we lay a ticket upon them, it bombards the courts. And at the end of the day, nothing particularly really happens because they need a driver's license. If they don't pay it, right, then it attacks under their license. If they don't have a license, then it becomes a judicial system problem, right? So we're just going around in circles by doing that. So we try and come up with different initiatives and ideas on how to actually correct that, right? And by speaking to Leon, right? And others, of course, they're there drinking. And so we try and do the best we can. Like, they're not intoxicated, we have to arrest them, take them to jail, right? That's not the end all be all to the solution. So we look forward to the community to come up with some suggestions and ideas, and we facilitate that. We listen to what the community wants, right? I get it. It's not very nice when you have visitors from out of town coming and you see some people in areas that are consuming liquor, right? But I think that's in any community that you go to. I think that's just the way society is, and it's unfortunate, right? And Leon, can you elaborate on why people sit, like, for example, let's use Citizens Park, why they sit in Citizens Park and drink? Is there a reason? Is it because of the proximity of the liquor store? Is it because they're there, they see their other friends and their other friends come and join them? Is that part of like a cultural thing?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so Leon says it's a cultural, right? They want to be in visual sight of other people so they can come and socialize and be part of the group, right? We don't know, I don't know all of their stories. I don't know where they come from, right? We all have different stories to tell. And I think it's very important that if we went there and sat with them, brought them a beverage, not liquor, but coffee or something like that. Because when I bring water to them at nighttime, we sit and we talk to them. We get to know them, try and understand, try and hear their story. Where are they? What happened to bring them to this, right? And like I said, after a while, you build some trust and they open up a little bit more and more. So.
Oh, I appreciate you coming and answering the questions, because those are questions I get.
For sure.
And I didn't know how to answer them.
Yeah, no. And you know what? I encourage the public that if they have these questions, please call the police. I'm more than welcome to sit with them and have this discussion. And I challenge anyone, counselors, citizens, to come and meet with me, and I will walk you into the tents. And then you can see what it looks like. You can see what goes on. You can have a conversation with the people that are living there and maybe get a glimpse in their life, right? Like I said, they're very resilient people, and they're like any one of us. We want to be heard, we want to be seen, we want to talk to, right? And so it's very important, I think, by reaching out and getting to know them, because they are community members as well.
So a couple administrative questions here. So first off, these are all on private property currently.
They are.
Okay. So do we ever engage the private property owner to say, hey, this is what's going on?
I'm not sure if Gary can.
Yes. We have certainly had conversations with the owners of two of those properties for certain. Earlier this year, the owners of those properties did make some efforts to clean things up and remove the items that were left there, discarded. More recently, though, those property owners haven't. And just last week, we had some conversations with the property owner on the west side about that, and then we're going to be re-examining things over the next couple of weeks.
Okay. And so if the public is seeing criminal activity going on, they should call the police. That's how the system is designed, for sure.
That is correct.
And pass that information on. I have a question for you, Leon. And so one of the things that, so first off, I'll start with, I think, because we've talked this about being tent city, we've talked about being homelessness or not homelessness, or having a place to go or not having a place to go. So I'll be the first to say that council has struggled with this one for a long time, because, we recognize that there's mental health issues. We recognize that there is addiction issues. We recognize that there's trauma in people's lives, and I think everybody's scenario is different. And so you can't have one blanket way of dealing with everyone the same way. And so I also struggle that, if I want to help with mental health resources, that's something that's done by the province. The town really isn't involved in that. If I want to help with health things that are going on, it's done by the province. It's not really done by us. If we talk about social housing, we have some role to play, but it doesn't actually fit in the mandate that we're in. If we talk about addictions, that's also done by the province. And so, council spend many years talking to the province to say, okay, like coordinating your resources is a big part of helping someone that goes along with having a physical space for them to occupy, and they need to work in tandem together. And so the frustration, I think, has been, especially in smaller communities, all the funding that comes right now provincially for those things goes to like Edmonton and Lethbridge and Calgary and Red Deer. And we get zero help for a lot of those things. And so I'm excited by the fact the Homeless Coalition is kind of doing a reset and looking at some options there, and they want to see it move forward. But I will say, Leon, one of the questions that I got and comments I got from a number of people that are in that experience right now, you know, when I was talking to them outside of this building or talking to them over in front of my own restaurant and things like that, was around the fact that I said, like, are you utilizing the MAT program? And they would say no, because there's too many rules there. And so one of the things I struggle with is that, you know, to put in a facility, we're going to spend a large amount of money. If there are rules there, because there has to be rules, there has to be things that are followed, will they still come?
So you understand the question? So will they come if there's rules still put in place? So they would come? So what type of rules don't they like? Can you answer that? Like, is it because of the hours that they open and close and they're not allowed outside to have a cigarette or whatever?
Yeah.
So if their freedoms were a little more relaxed, say, okay, you're allowed to go out and have a cigarette like at midnight, would they be satisfied with that? Or are they looking more to feed their addiction, whether that be alcohol or drugs?
Because that's the one I got lots. If I can't drink, I don't want to go.
And I don't think we're putting it all, like, we're not lumping it all together into one, right? Because I don't think that's fair. Certain people that have, there's a lot of underlying issues, right? There's a lot of layers of trauma, a lot of layers of challenges, right? So everyone that comes might have a different, right? For example, when I was delivering water, I went to the Citizens Park, and there was a lady there, and she was having a hard time. So we asked, what can we do for you? Can we call the hospital? And she was adamant she was fine, but she just needed to work through her, whatever issue she was having. And she said, no, I'm fine. And the next day I saw her and she says, no, I worked through it, and I moved forward. Which brings me up to another point. Are you comfortable with that question? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did he answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I understand. It can be. One thing doesn't fit all. I was just curious there, because there's nothing more frustrating than to build something that doesn't get used, right?
There might be another issue, I think, or an initiative that we can probably develop, but we need buy-in from some of the community organizations within Slave Lake. So it's been brought to my attention, do we have a pop-up site? So what that pop-up site looks like is that we come to the front of this building, say on a Tuesday night, and we have mental health there, we have addictions there, we have the police there, we have hospital workers there, and they can talk to the people to see what their needs are. So if they're injecting, right, drugs, we want it to be safe for them. We don't want any more overdoses in our community. So this is an opportunity that we can have someone trained in naloxone and how to administer that properly. I know I can just feel eyes just burning through me saying, what are you suggesting, right? But I think it's important that we see enough overdoses that we respond to. And sometimes the people you administer naloxone to them, they come to, but sometimes they don't. And we're there too late. EMS is there too late. And if we gave the training to the people that have the addictions to administer naloxone properly, that could save a life.
So this pop-up idea then is coordinating these resources all in the same spot. Right. And you're talking about teaching them how to use this product.
Yes.
Not so much this would be a safe injection site.
No, that's right.
Okay,
it's different. Clear, it's different. Like if someone's struggling with their mental health, like for this lady that was upset over whatever trauma she was going through, reliving, right? If there was a counselor there to talk her and give her the support she needed. Here she is all by herself. She had another person there trying to help her, right? Because they know each other quite well. I'm just saying, if we had a support worker there,
Fair enough.
So
Councillor
I
King.
will say, Don, oh, sorry. I will say that we did try that for an extended period of time, maybe 2.5, 3 months. We had it set up at the Friendship Center. Addiction Services was there, counseling was there. We didn't have anybody show up. So love the idea, maybe a more neutral area. I don't know. But that avenue has been, and same as like Tyler was saying, it's sad to see it not utilized.
So maybe what we could do is maybe have a traveling roadshow perhaps, right? So
Yeah.
we know where the people are, right? Why don't we
Go to them and.
go to them rather than them come to us? And I think is that part of the problem, Leon?
Mm-hmm.
Is that you're very comfortable in a certain area. So if the people came to you and offered you some services, would it be well perceived? Would people like that? Because you don't want to walk to certain areas. You don't want to walk to the Friendship Center, for example, on a cold or hot day, right? So we drive there and we offer the services, whether they take it or not, that at least it's being offered to them.
Okay, Councillor Graham.
When you said there's no criminal activity, maybe I'm naive to that term then, are these injection sites then?
No.
Okay, so this is a different group that we're talking about now? Or,
I would hypothetically, that was just a
okay,
hypothetically.
okay.
So that is the criminal activity I get a lot of questions about is people shooting up in those areas, whether they're walking by or whatever. Needles, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I've never seen it. But I think that's kind of along the lines of the criminal activity.
Well, I can tell you that when I go through the camps, tents, I don't see any used needles. They're not discarded like in some of the communities that we know about, right? Where they just discard it anywhere and in playgrounds. I'm not seeing that here.
Okay.
So
That's good.
I think we should be thankful on that. Unless the people that are using the needles are very diligent by discarding the property. I don't know. I had one person come and ask me, where does he get safe needles? Because he doesn't want to use the same needle. So I directed that person to the hospital, to the health centers.
So is there a safe disposal site? Like,
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
yeah.
And you know, on another note, you know, I asked some of the people, you know, you talk about criminal activity. So I asked them, and one response that I got from one person was, we're easy targets. The public sees us all over the place. So it's easy for the public to say they're drug users, they're alcoholics, they're thieves, because they break into places to support their addictions. He said, we are not these people. And I would suggest as well, they're not stealing your quads. They're not stealing other vehicles. It's not them. They're very resilient. They just want to be like, it's hard to describe because I'm not in their shoe, right? Leon, can you explain maybe what the thought process is like? You know, people say that for example, Leon, you're a drunk. Why don't you get a job? Right? We don't know your story. So, you know, I think you get frustrated as well when people say, well, Leon is just a criminal. Can you add to that at all? Like, is that just their opinion? Okay. So you know what, you know, so it's hard. Like, I'm not in their shoe, right? And I wish I had more of Leon and his family and his friends to come here and answer those questions. Because like I said, I think there's so many layers of challenges.
And I would say, Don, that Leon is not who we're talking about. It's the ones with the masks and the
Riding the painted bikes.
riding the painted bikes. And it's the criminal activity is the drugs and the alcohol. It's not, I've known Leon for years. It's not Leon. It's that criminal activity. I wouldn't even put homeless in that category.
So I think the citizens of Slave Lake are lumping them in that because unfortunately they are.
True.
They are
Yep.
in the public eye and they get painted with a a brush, like we all, like there's bad people in all walks of life, right? In different agencies, and it's just that one person makes that really bad and painted apple, right? So.
Okay, Councillor Busk.
Just wondering if we could take us back to your report a little bit. So question here about your municipal overview of your financials. So your commissioner guarding, so the guarding of the prisoners overnight and stuff like that, that's a dramatic decrease of money being spent. So does that mean that it's more of the catch and release? You're just arresting them and releasing them as soon as possible as per ordered, and we're not holding overnight as much as we used to?
No, I wouldn't say that. It depends on the call. If someone's intoxicated, we have a responsibility to make sure, we call it release when safe. So we release them when they're safe to go back to the community. So if they're intoxicated to a point where they can't look after themselves, and then they become victims of crime because of their intoxication level, we have a responsibility to make sure they're safe. So we assess it. 8 hours is the minimum that they can stay. Sorry, the maximum that we can keep them, unless we determine they're still grossly intoxicated, whatever the case may be, that we hold them longer. We have bail hearings. Bail hearings are supposed to be done within a timely fashion. Unfortunately, we find some of the delays are longer. So the judicial interim releases are longer because the bail hearings aren't getting sorted out in a timely fashion. So we're working on that within internally and with the government to have this rectified. Does that answer the question?
Once again, looking at the numbers, the $160,000 line item, and there's been $6,000 spent. So I'm wondering how there's such a dramatic decrease in the guarding of, I'm guessing, the cells. And if you can explain to me that if we're looking after the same amount of prisoners as we used to, how is that such a cost savings?
That's a good question. I know that we have 3 full-time guards, and so Slave Lake is a hub for other prisoners. So if they have court in Desmarais, they transport them to Slave Lake. We charge that detachment for housing those prisoners for meals and hours. If they're a provincial prisoner, then we bill back the province for that cost. If they're a municipal prisoner, they're funded by the municipality. So we will get prisoners transported from High Prairie, Desmarais, Red Earth Creek, so that they can meet the sheriffs to transport them from Slave Lake to the correctional facilities in either that be Edmonton or whether it be in Peace River.
And on that note, since you brought that up, so at one point when we were having our discussions, you had mentioned, or maybe it was John had mentioned, that we were having our officers having to take prisoners to Grand Prairie, to all these different places, and basically being a shuttle because the sheriffs weren't available, let's say, to put it bluntly, and we're not a facility that can house offenders long term. They have to be taken somewhere, right? So we were losing our officers for extended periods of time as they were actually being transport people. There's no other way to say it. Has that dropped, or are we still seeing that number as high as usual? Because I really have a problem when our officers are leaving our community to do the sheriff's job and the cost associated with that, because as a taxpayer, we're sitting here, we're paying for our policing to look after our communities. And when they're having to go a full shift to take them to Grand Prairie or to Edmonton or wherever it may be, we've lost that officer for the day. So when we're down 2 officers already and you have 1 or 2 officers going, let's say, different directions, that's not leaving very many for a complement of protecting our community. So I'm more than curious to see those numbers. If they've dropped, if it's as high as ever, then we still have the same problem that we've had for the last couple of years. So that's where I'm going with that question, is if the guarding dollars are down, does that mean that we've just shipped the problem off somewhere else and we're not doing as much here? I'm just, when we see the increases coming back at us for the RCMP and stuff like that, that are possibly coming forward, I need to be able to justify to the community that the money that we are paying for the RCMP is being used in this community and not being shuttling prisoners from point A to point B, and not sitting here looking after my residents here, right? So that's something to look at, get back to us with. And
we've rectified that problem with the sheriffs. I think because it was a change in services of who's transporting, when they're transporting, we've worked out the kinks, and it's working much, much better, where the sheriffs do come on a regular basis to pick up the prisoners and take them to remand or the other correctional facilities. So we are not transporting prisoners anymore. The only prisoner we're transporting, and we're obligated, is when we do a Form 10 on a patient, that a person is having a mental episode, and we do that assessment to say they need to see someone professionally to get their condition looked at. So that has changed. So when we Form 10 a patient, we cannot take them to the Slave Lake Hospital because that's not a designated facility. So we have to take them to a designated facility. That could be in Grand Prairie or Edmonton. Therefore, a member has to transport that patient to one of those designated facilities and has to remain there until that person is seen by a physician. And if they're deemed fit to go back to the community, then we transport them back. Because in the past, what they were finding was we're transporting these mental health patients down there, dropping them off, and now they have no way to get back to their community. So they've alleviated that. So we have to be on the hook and stay with them until we turn them over to a person in the facility that can look after them and guard them. But for the most part, we have to stay there. And I think that number is quite low, very, very low for Slave Lake on transporting mental health patients.
Okay.
And if we do have to transport a Form 10 patient, what we do is we try and bring someone that's on a day off to come and do that. So it's not tying, we're not removing a resource from the community.
Okay. I want to go back to one last question there around, you had mentioned the one that was south of Fire Hall, lady was trying to get back to her community. So is there no resources to get her back to her community? Like we just talked about that there's transportation for some of those mental health pieces. Is there no option for her? Like how far does she have to go? Like
her community is in Swan River, and basically she has funds that she gets funds, but she's just waiting for the funds to come in so that she can make an arrangement to get back to her community. I never asked her that question, like, what can we do to assist you, right? Because the RCMP, we're not in a position to transport people, right? Because the optics of that is, oh, there's the police again, taking someone out of the community, right?
Okay.
So we don't like to do that. She's very good. Like I said, she's just on rough times right now. And maybe when I speak to her, maybe if I see her tomorrow, I'll have that conversation. How can we get you back to your community, right?
I know that Councillor King had talked before that there's a bunch of funding or stuff out there for transportation. So,
but at the end of the day too, like I've explained to her, like she wanted food and I brought her food to her. And I told her, if you want more food, please go to the Friendship Center. You know, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, right? And so whether that she wants to go to the Friendship Center and make those connections to go back to the community, that has to go on her shoulders to some degree as well.
okay. Okay, so Councillor Ferguson.
Question about human resources here. So it says that there's 13 established positions. There's 12 officers currently working and there's one hard vacancy. So I guess the question is, despite having 12 officers, are we still having the hour coverage of 13 officers, or is it the hour coverage of 12
Absolutely.
officers?
Yes, we cover off those hours with other, like, we make the schedule work. Yes, it would be nice to have those vacancies filled, because then it gives our officers more time off, right? For their mental wellness, right? But there's times that we have to bring people on overtime to cover those shifts.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is that for these tent cities, we've got a better idea of where they are and how big they actually are. You're saying that you're not getting reports of criminal activity in there. You guys have stepped up patrols in there and you're not seeing criminal activity. Many of the issues are quite complex, and I love the idea of this pop-up thing that goes to them. And so I'm assuming that's something through some of the discussions of the Homeless Coalition that might be a strategy as we move forward. But sorry, Councillor Busk, you had something. No, I was just going to say, I appreciate you coming today, getting a better understanding of what that world looks like. I saw Don walking into one of them the one day, so I pulled over and went with them to go take a look and see what it was like. And it was definitely not what I expected. It wasn't a big area. It was a very small one. It was very clean. It was very tidy. There wasn't garbage around. The people that were there were very quiet and respectful, and it was very interesting. It was quite opposite of what I expected when I went in there. So I encourage those that are interested to find out. I think at the end of the day, though, connecting with those property owners, because I talked to one of the property owners and they kind of gave me the impression that they didn't even know it was there. So having that connection, I think is a good piece and a good spot to start with. And we'll see where we end up. But I appreciate, Leon, you coming today. I appreciate you coming, Don, and sharing that information. Councillor Busk.
Just one last question there about your numbers and stuff like that. So we're at 11, we're supposed to have 13. Give us an overview of the last year. Have we ever been at 13? Have we? Because for the 11 years I've been here on council, it doesn't seem that we've ever had a full complement here. There's always people shifting out. Sometimes their houses aren't selling. There's a few more officers here than the 13, because they have to wait until, of course, their house is sold and stuff like this. But when I see the 13 number, it just, I've never seen it where we've had our full complement here. There's always one position or two positions, and we're always filling them with new recruits from depot and stuff like that. So explain to me the process. When we take the individuals, officers from depot, it takes another officer to work with them for 3 months, is it? Or 6 months?
6 months.
6 weeks.
6 months.
Or 6 months. So we've got that new officer partnered up with one of them, or with a experienced officer. So does that diminish our shift coverage in terms of we let's say we have 4 on nights. Now, instead of 4 single officers, we've got 2 pairs of officers, hypothetically, because there's 2 recruits from depot, correct? So is that limiting our coverage of the area? You know what I'm saying? Instead of 4 vehicles out there, 4 sets of eyes, we've basically got 2 vehicles. We're only covering half as much territory.
No, so when I say 6 months, so they're on, it's called recruit field training for 6 months. But the recruit can go in their own car after 4 months. So, or after 2 months, really, they can be in their own vehicle. They just have to have a trainer nearby to give them direction and guidance when they need it. So there's a senior officer always available to them. After 4 months, like they can't go on call by themselves for the first 2 months. After 4 months, they're kind of cut from the nest, and they're allowed to fly free for a bit, but they still have to have some kind of continuity and senior officer to give them advice. And there is a senior member always on shift to give them the advice and guidance. And for the last couple of years, we have been over our establishment. We had one position that was an enhanced police position, and that was to do with First Nations policing. Well, we don't have a First Nations to police. So that position was on our books for quite some time. I don't know the number, how long it was on, and we just lost him last year. So the town and the MD was receiving a free police officer, and you weren't paying for that police officer. But since that person's been transferred, they took that position and canceled it. So we were above strength. So when we lose, so we had a staff sergeant and a constable. When they got transferred, husband and wife, we lost those two positions right away, right? When they sold their home. So now we're trying to play catch up. I don't understand. And I've had this conversation with our staffing, with our district officer on why we cannot recruit people to come to Slave Lake, senior members to come to Slave Lake. We don't understand that. And this community is a very, very good community. It's very pro-police. I see a lot of positives in this community, and I don't know why it's so challenging to get senior members to come here. And if they can't come here, there's other communities that are struggling, and they're getting cadet after cadet after cadet. Well,
So we're not unique.
yes. So it's across the board. I don't know, maybe the community, it's an individual's choice. I chose to come here. I was offered to come to Slave Lake, and some other communities, I chose Slave Lake.
So we're happy that you did.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Happy I came. So, yeah.
Okay, if there's nothing else, we appreciate you gentlemen coming tonight.
Thank you.
We'll jump into the rest of our agenda.
Perfect.
Thanks, guys. Okay, service levels, ice rentals. Gary. Okay.
Okay, so I'm here tonight to present on our service levels for ice rentals. We have kind of 5 categories that we look at when we go into the beginning of a season to rent out ice. We have our regular user groups, which includes minor hockey, the figure skating club, our adult users as well, and then junior recs or other minor sport group. We have weekend schedules, which is how we work with minor hockey to dole out ice on the weekends, the ice dogs, and then our internal programs, as well as private rentals. So kind of how we start the season every year is we meet with our user groups in August or September. So we have our user group meeting set for August 19th this year. And we meet with them to discuss how ice is going to be allocated for our regular practice schedule. Generally, it goes pretty smoothly. It's the same from year to year. The groups are good about negotiating between themselves if they want to switch anything up. At this point, there is not an excess of demand based on what we have available. So we work through the process with those groups, and the schedule stays consistent with the exception of things like Christmas break. Tournament weekends are a little bit different, but it's generally a good process. And all those groups sign off on a nice users agreement with us and give us a group, give us their organization's insurance, and then we invoice them on a monthly basis. As part of it works in with that, but a little bit different is minor hockey's part of the Northern Alberta Interlock. So NAI, each minor hockey association that's part of NAI has to give certain number of ice slots per season. And then NAI coordinates the schedule. So it is it's not a super smooth process always, but it's more NAI releasing ice. If there's makeup games, then we work with them on that. Minor hockey has to give their schedule 72 hours prior to the weekend to us. So once they give us that schedule, if anything has changed, we release the ice. It's available for public rentals. And if they don't give us their schedule 72 hours ahead of time, they are billed for the ice if we're not able to rent it out. We've talked to other communities about the way they do it, and the consensus is that is generally how it's done. So we just, like I said, it's overall a fairly smooth process. I've been here 7 years now, and we've kind of perfected the process. So we're happy with how it is. We've had the ice jogs join us in 2019. They operate kind of external from our regular user groups, as they have a contract with us that dictates what ice they are able to utilize, when they have game time, how they're billed, what ice fees they're charged. But they do attend our regular user group meetings. Again, if they have additional requests, we will look at it from a contract base. We do also, though, want to accommodate them where we can. So we'll work with our user groups to see if there's the opportunity to provide them with more ice if they've requested it, or move games around. Or generally the thing that comes up is when we have tournament weekends, if they want to host a game, just working with tournament organizers to make sure that those are accommodated. Then we make sure that there's public access time through our internal programs. So we have a variety of public skates every week. We have our adult drop-in hockey sessions, parent and taught skates, and as well as we have something called stick and puck, which is a more of a casual time for people to come out where you don't need full gear to participate in hockey. And then we also add in our PDD skates. We have Christmas holiday skates, glow skates, and things like that when we have ice availability and demand. So we always do make sure that we have those available for those people that aren't able to participate in some of those minor sports, or adult sports, I guess, too. And then kind of what's left, we're able to rent out as private rentals. One thing we've started to do on the weekends to make sure that there's opportunities for private rentals is we've allocated an hour of ice on Saturday and Sunday, just to make sure that if people want to host birthday parties or have a time to come out and skate with their families, there is that time guaranteed to be available. We've started to firm up some of our processes around just rules and regulations around private rentals. So they do have to sign off on an ice rental agreement that goes over things like helmets should be worn, that there has to be an adult on present if the group's 14 years or younger. Someone that's over 18 has to sign the ice rental agreement. Yeah, that's kind of how we work the season.
Okay, questions from council? Councillor Gramlich.
Just wondering when the internal programs start. That's what everyone will ask.
At the beginning of September, as Gary mentioned, we will have, for sure, it'll start at the beginning of September. We will hopefully have ice available for rent at the end of this week. So depending on what the demand is for ice rentals, we are looking at possibly throwing out some everyone welcome skates. And I'm like, I don't want to commit to this without fully doing it, but we would like to look at doing a youth drop-in hockey session before minor hockey starts. We just have to figure out how we administrate that from a risk management standpoint. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, a couple questions. So in regards to this available ice, all of a sudden minor hockey says, hey, we're releasing these, you've got this available ice, you find out on Wednesday. How does the community know what you have for available ice so that I can book it?
We've tried to throw it out on Facebook. This year, as Gary mentioned, we've had a change in positions. So I've taken on for the year, the user group bookings and how the ice works. So I know that my plan for once I get the minor hockey schedule on Wednesday is Jordan doesn't know this yet, but I'll send Jordan a note and he'll throw it up on Facebook and hopefully have a spot on the website too. That kind of goes
so we're
over.
advertising it, throwing it out there. And the frontline people then that are in the MRC are aware of this and able to book it?
Yes, every time. So I kind of come up with what's available and then it's communicated to them. And so if someone phones, right now they're taking an interest list and we'll phone all those people back when we have our guaranteed time. So.
Okay, another question. As part of our contract with the Ice Dogs, it was around our in-house advertising. And so year one, they had kind of taken that on. Year two, they kind of gave that back. Is it still given back?
It is, yes.
Okay, and so then a question, when are we then,
When ice
invoicing, doing those
when
things?
ice season starts, we'll approach everyone again. Our plan was to change. So we used to bill January to December. We would like to do ice season billing. So that works with what we're going to be doing this year.
Makes way more sense.
Yeah.
The other thing is then, I guess it's easy to go to the same people that have a logo on there, but is there any appetite or any initiative to expand upon that we've got stuff, Space Still and Arena 2, we've got stuff in the field house.
There is, yes. And I was going to say, I can't remember what year it was, but probably 2018 was the last time we did an advertising package. Obviously we're with COVID, and then I was on maternity leave, things have been a little different, but that is our intention this year, is to start marketing. We also have a new Zamboni, so we will have some advertising space to sell there if people aren't interested in coming back. So yeah.
Sounds good. One of the things that I would encourage administration to look at is that if it is something that, we're doing our mass mail out and we're still have this available space and nothing, whatever, is there a possibility to incentivize some of our staff on a commission type basis to go out and do some stuff and plug some of that stuff up?
We've talked about that, and as well, we're coming back out with the program. We're starting small because I'm committing to do it, so it's not going to be a huge one to start off with, but the program kind of flyer where we have our information. So I was going to put some information there too about if you wanted to advertise. So yeah.
Sounds good. Councillor Ferguson and Councillor Busk.
I'm just going to say that we have a list of everybody in town who has business licenses. So maybe it makes sense just to send them an information package in the mail, just to connect directly with them.
That would be that would be very smart. I'm sure we can connect. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Busk.
So just for my own curiosity, now that COVID rules have been basically relaxed, there is no regulations of how teams can have practices. We can have the little kids playing mini sticks in the lobby. They can have, everything is back up and going the way it should, so that if the farmer's market wants to go, they can go. Like there's no restrictions in that facility.
We are normal.
We are normal unless unless a sports organization has restrictions of their own restrictions. We plan to open the Reed's Rink and the Play Center as of September. That's a staffing thing, not a COVID thing right now.
Okay. So I know we're talking ice rentals, but just the overall facility, walking track, all that stuff will come out with a big push to advertise our hours once we get fully staffed up again and stuff like that. Get back to
our plan is, so we've kind of slowly been doing it, but our plan is I'm not sure if Ashley's booked it yet, but we're planning to have a booth at the All In event. So our thing is to throw it all out there, and that's our
sounds good
weekend to push it. So
any last questions, comments? If not, Councillor King.
Make a motion that council approves this report as information.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. You're doing Serena's report, Fcss? Okay.
Gary's doing
Gary's doing
it.
it? Okay. Thanks, Joe.
I do apologize to council that Serena was under the weather tonight and unable to make it.
Okay.
So this report really essentially follows up on the report that we presented back in May around the community social needs assessment. At that time, council wanted to have some more additional information around action plan. So what we did is internally we met, looked at all the programs that we've provided over the last 3 years in terms of FCSS side of things, to really get a handle on what we've been providing, what meets the provincial FCSS funding framework, and how that fits within the community social needs assessment. After going through that exercise, is really where a few areas where we identify gaps, as well as opportunities to enhance what we're doing. Need to be really clear that one of the challenges that municipalities are going to be facing when it comes to FCSS funding is the government has told us that there's going to be increased accountability to make sure that we're following their framework. In the past, there's been a little bit more wiggle room for municipalities, but they keep telling us this is coming. So it's one of the things that we were very cognizant of when we were putting this together. In terms of gaps, the areas that we identified were reconciliation, diversity and inclusion, and that FCSS hasn't really done much in those areas at all. The opportunities that we identified were really around revitalizing our community grant program. We're trying to develop neighborhood connections, reviewing and updating the Anger Ed program, and some opportunities for teen programming, as well as Indigenous programming and the diversity awareness, as I already said. So in 2021, since we're partway through the year, our goal is to finish off or continue on with the first 4 of those areas. So bringing forward some recommendations around the FCSS grant framework, working on the neighborhood connection piece. We have a block party package that I just received this morning, so I haven't proofread it to make sure there isn't some changes that needed to it, but we are working on a block party program in terms of way to bring people together to create that community connectiveness. I was having a hard time with that word. Create that community connection between people. And coming out of the COVID restrictions, it seems like a really good time to be launching that. The next one is to work on rejuvenating our Anger Ed program. Our Anger Ed program has worked really well. We have great facilitators.
The one next to yours.
There we go.
There we go. Okay, sorry about that. Our Anger Ed program, we have great facilitators, but we saw it as an opportunity to make sure that we're getting the best bang for our buck and to help revitalize that program a bit. And also the last area we were going to focus on is our preteen and teen programming. We've done programs in the past, but we need to be able to bring that forward and keep that moving forward in that. So that those are kind of the areas that we're focusing on. Our intent is certainly not to overlap of any programs being offered by any agencies or anything else in the community. So it was part of the process, is identifying who's doing what within the community. And those were the areas that we had identified as kind of our priorities.
Okay, questions, comments from council? I'll start and say, Gary, I appreciate this. It looks like the administration has taken the time to do a comprehensive look into what we've been doing, what we've been offering, and what we're missing. And so we've taken this needs assessment that we have and actually looked at and coordinated with what we've actually done in the past to understand where that we need to tweak. And so that for me, I was one of the ones that talked previously about understanding the action piece of it. This is a little bit more direct and I understand where we're going. So you're bringing forward a new community grant structure that you want to talk about in the future. We'll get into that. I love the part about neighborhood connection. I think, trying to promote those things and increase those things, I think are a huge part of building that community pride. It helps with vandalism, it helps with crime, it helps with awareness. Connecting that, I think, is great. So I look forward to seeing what that block party stuff is, those connections are all about. And, we've heard more than once about there's not enough for teens to do. So I'm excited too to see what you're bringing forward in regards to programming with that. And, I think this is great. I'm starting to see that evolution. I'm starting to see that narrower focus. Look forward to the action part of all this. Any other questions, comments from council? If not, Councillor King.
Make a motion that council approves the SDSS 2021-2022 programming plan report for information.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Okay, next, event funding. Christina.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening, Christina.
The report here is about event funding allocation. We're requesting that council approve allocation of 30,000 for the all event from unrestricted surplus to the promotions budget for the all-in-one event.
Okay.
I don't know. Do you guys have any questions?
No, so I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page here as I understand this. So during council's budget deliberations, we had some discussions about events and putting money in for events and ramping up some of those pieces, and events was a big part of our budget discussion. So around that, at the time, we had talked about allocating some money into that programming piece, but at the time,
Yeah, we didn't move the money. We left it in the surplus there.
left it in the surplus because the idea was we wanted to see what the event would look like and what was coming forward first before we just took it out of that budget. And so that's why it's coming under unrestricted surplus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, we didn't know about COVID, right? Like what was going to happen either. So we kind of left it in the surplus.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Sorry, Gary, you look like you want to add some.
That's correct. I was just also going to make mention that in addition to the motion that's printed, could we also have a second part to that motion to that the funding be allocated to the Tourism Association to help pay for the event, the all-in event? That wasn't included in the motion, but it was moving it to the budget.
Okay.
And out of that budget, we need to have a motion to allocate it to the right agency.
Okay. So we're looking for two motions. One to take it from the surplus into the promotions budget, and then one from the promotions budget to the Tourism Society who's organizing. Okay. Councillor Busk.
So just a quick question here. I'm just curious where we got this number for the unrestricted surplus of 2,082,000. In that I've been asking for this number for months now, and this is a new number. It's always been the 1.3 million or whatever it is. So have we finally come up? This is the true unrestricted surplus now. I've never seen this number before, so
Okay.
just curious.
I would have to look into that there. That number, I don't know. I can confirm though for you and get
Okay.
back to you on that.
We can confirm that that did come from our finance director.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, in my head, I had about 1.8 was what was in our financial audited statements there when we approved those here, back in April. Okay. Other questions? Councillor Brandel, then McGregor, then King.
I just wanted to clarify that the money going to the Tourism Society is not just for the concert, for the tourism, it's for the whole all-in event and will be going to all of the events. Just want to clarify that.
Okay.
Good. So I'm going to need some more clarification on that to sell $30,000 going to a party of tax-paying money. So sell it to the community, what this $30,000 is going to be used for and what it's going to pay for. And is this a one-time or is this going to be a continuation?
Tourism Society, you want to speak to that?
Well, it's not just going to be, I guess essentially it's not allocated to anything at the moment. It's going to be in the blanket account that'll encompass 2 concerts, live music at the block party. There's street performers. It's basically one big pool, Councillor McGregor, that we haven't allocated the money out of yet. That encompass the 3 days of events.
So rough, what's your overall budget for those?
It's going to be close to $150,000.
Okay.
So when you book a band, say the band costs $60,000, the band doesn't cost $60,000. It costs that plus flights, plus a rider, plus hotels, plus security, plus food, plus venue rentals. Like it's a pretty big budget. So we could probably provide the budget and you could pick what portion it went to and allocate it to, I really like the block party stuff with the kids festival, the street performers, that stuff. But to say it's allocated specifically for one band or the security, it's not. It's one big pool where all the money will come out of.
So I got another question then on that. So will this be a continuation in the budget line item for councils to come that you will be asking for tax-paying money to go to the Tourism Society? Or is the Tourism Society its own registered society with the government and they will look for their own funding, or will it always rely back on to municipal tax-paying dollars?
The Tourism Society is a registered society. And the goal is to be a self-sufficient group at that eventually. We hope to do the destination marketing to fund that one. But that one is a long game, so that's not going to happen, in the next year. Like I said, it's a long game. But as for continuation, that is unknown because we don't know what we're going to be doing in the future. We don't know what COVID is going to bring. It's not just up to the Tourism Society either, because the Chamber is a very big part of that. So, to be determined, I guess, is the short answer.
Okay, so then there is other societies in Slave Lake, so it holds its own registration in that number. So will this be something then that other societies can come back and ask for money if they want to throw a big event at the Legacy and at the MRC? Then could another registered society, because you guys are your own society, come then and bring that to us and they would like 30,000, 40,000, 10,000 out of our municipal tax budget? So like this is coming from the Tourism Society. So there is other societies in Slave Lake. So does this give them opportunity then to come and ask for money as well to put on a function, 1 off, 2 off, 3 off? Can then they come and ask for money that way as well through this? Just asking for event funding allocation, then can they come, other societies that are registered and want to put on event in Slave Lake, are they able to come and then and ask for tax-paying dollars to be used for that?
I guess if we talk about that in budget as a council, that will be determined at that time.
I'll chime in. I'll say, like, I run several events through societies and charities and never asked for anything. This is an entity of the town. The Tourism Society is an entity of the town. So that's where we're getting some of this funding from.
No, it's its own society. It's not an entity of the town.
Yeah, we have town representatives that sit on it, but it's not an entity of the town. But theoretically, to answer your question, any group can come ask us for anything at any time. So whether it's funding, whether it's to change bylaws, whether it's to change whatever, there's a process that they have to go through, whether it's something with planning or zoning or bylaws or whatever else, there's a process for that. If it's some of these fit within the Fcss mandate, and so then they come in under that. So administration would always vet all these requests. Or it could be a group that wants to come talk about something else that they want us to support them. Like one Citizens on Patrol came once there for some help with some things that they were doing and letters of support. We've got one here for a letter of support for tonight. I guess the point is any group from the community can always come to us with any requests. These aren't the guys, we're helping the Chamber of Commerce. We help the golf course. We help curling rink. We're already in the business of helping some of these community organizations already. So
that actually leads right into my question, because when these organizations come forward, they do a presentation, they give us a budget, we make an informed decision. So with this, it's just a report. I don't know who's brought it to us. I don't know who's asking for the money. It doesn't say tourism anywhere. I don't even know who's asking for it. So that's my problem. Like, nobody came to present to us. I know what's happening. But there's no budget, there's no allocation of money. When the Chamber comes and asks for their 10,000, we want to see their budget. We want to see everything. This is $30,000 and I'm not comfortable just giving it away without a plan.
Okay.
That's my thought.
So to the representatives on the Tourism Society, what is the timing? How quickly do you need some of these funds to be able to move forward and get things done?
Well, if I'm speaking candidly, months ago, we thought we were receiving this money. So.
Yeah, so some of your discussions have been with the CAO behind the scenes. And so that has been some of the linchpin. So I will say to Councillor King's comment, I don't disagree. In the past, we normally have a budget that comes to us. We understand what we're spending on. Behind the scenes, our councillors have verbally been updating us at some of our meetings that we've had. On top of this, some of our councillors have been working on some of this stuff for these events coming on. I understand that this is hundreds of thousands of dollars and they're asking for a fraction of that. I know that you guys have made a request to the MD as well, and things are proceeding. This is not normally how we would do it. And in fairness, It was only approximately 5 weeks ago that the province decided that we could actually do anything like this. So it's one of those things where we're in a situation where you have to react quickly. What I will say is that although that this is the Tourism Society and it's separate from the town, we do have town representatives that sit on it. I am also excited by the fact that our own budget deliberations had talked about doing bigger events, showcasing things that are going on in the community. We want things to happen. I think the ability to partner with organizations like this and bring together the community and the Chamber of Commerce and things that are involved to make some of that happen brings capacity that we would never, ever, ever, ever be able to do on our own. And so I don't love this, but I understand that we've got a multi-day event here, something that we're going to attract multiple people to it. It's substantially more money than what the group is asking for. And it was a passion of council there to invest in events. And I understand that we're behind the 8 ball on the timeline. I would encourage the group in the future to make sure that they had a budget that they brought forward and laid some of those items out. But knowing the timeline, I'm comfortable to trust in the process.
I will say that there was an outlined budget and talks with the CAO that like where this money's coming from, we thought it was in place. So.
Yeah, I think the initial discussions were that it was within programming within the town of Slave Lake. Councillor King.
I don't disagree that I think this is going to be a fantastic event for our region as a whole. I did have a question because there is other sponsoring agencies on the poster. I have 2 questions actually. If anyone else has contributed yet financially, that is on that. And the second is, I do recall the conversation about the events. I was under the impression that that was going to be for more events like Canada Day, Frost Fest, like our events, like throw some extra money that way. We gave the tourist
We still haven't.
10,000. We're supposed to. And
It wasn't 10.
8.
It was 5,000 as part of our budget discussion.
So anyway, my concern is the same as always, and wondering about financial donors. Tyler, did you just say they approached the MD? Like, is anyone else doing this?
Absolutely. We've all the sponsors on the posters that you were referring to. Yeah, they're contributing. They're contributing partners. Absolutely.
Because like I know we put a lot of our staff time in. We do every year. I'm not sure what behind the scenes are. If you guys are paying for the multi-rec, like I kind of need all that information because it's all taxpayers' money, if that makes sense. Like I'm having a hard time giving $30,000 out when I'm trying to penny pinch everything, and there's not a plan behind where this money's going. I know there's a plan, but the public doesn't see the plan.
Okay.
I guess when we talked about events in budgets, and it wasn't just one discussion, it was several. And we actually expanded that amount because we were only talking 10,000 initially, and we expanded it to 20 or 30. I didn't think that it was one specific event or, 5 events or whatever. I just thought it was events for the community. And because of restrictions, we couldn't do events for 6 months, 7 months of this year. This is the biggest event that the town is doing. And it's not just the Tourism Society. So there's other events. The community has really jumped on board on this. And there are so many pop-up events that are happening with our event. It is truly an all-in event.
I don't disagree. Like I said, I think it's going to be.
Tourism's not asking for this money. If I was coming here with the.
Well, then who's asking for this money?
We're under the assumption it was already allocated to us, but
But who asked for it to be allocated? This is my question. Where is this money coming from? Who asked? When did they ask? And none of us made a decision.
So a group. Okay, go ahead, Gary.
I'm confused.
Well, I will just say that this group, right? So first off, let's be candid here. So is it new information that the tourism group was working on the strategy for this all-in event?
No.
No. Okay, perfect.
Only since
Okay.
restrictions lifted, so months after budget.
Okay, right. Okay. So in the last 6 weeks, this group has said that they're forging ahead and they're going to do this all-in event. We understand that it's well over $100,000 to to do this event.
Mhm.
And one band alone is probably 3/4 of that amount. And so this group had been talking with our CAO behind the scenes about this. And this group was under the understanding, as so was our administration, that we had $30,000 in a program line for our budget. What has been understood since, and the CAO isn't here to be able to talk about it, is that it wasn't in there. And so now they had to bring a report forward to council to discuss the spending of this $30,000 that was understood by this group for the last number of weeks in conversations with the CEO that existed, and they had access to those funds to help put on this event. So unfortunately, that person is not here to be able to comment and provide all that information. But I will say that this group then has been under this assumption because that's what was told to them. So at the end of the day, I guess what you're saying is that in order to feel comfortable, you know all about this event and you're in on this event, you're having these, okay, you don't know anything.
I don't know all of the event. I've been very far away from the event.
Okay.
So is this all the money we have for events? Like, we still have September, October, November, December. Is this all the event? Like, is this all our event money?
Apparently, we don't have actual event money. It's just in surplus.
There was never top up added to in the
We
budget.
thought it was a budget line. We all thought it was a budget line, but now tonight we're finding out that it's.
And this is why I'm not comfortable. Because if it wasn't a budget line.
So the best one to answer those types of questions is a person that's not in this room. And so I'm not,
Not sure why it was done that way, but.
And I can't ask that person. And I don't think I'll be able to ask that person tomorrow or the next day. So I guess what does council need to feel comfortable about what we're doing here?
I don't even know where this money came from. Like Darren said, this
It's
number
coming.
is different from another number. So I don't even know what's an unrestricted surplus to give it away.
Well, there was 1.8 in the financial statements that we approved 2 months ago. So. Councilor McGregor.
Okay, so then we're going to give the $30,000 to the Tourism Society. Will there be a chance for the Tourism Society to use this money past the all-in event? Or will this be the end of, will this be all that tourism can do then? And will you need to come back for more? Or will this be able to be used in other events?
I would hope this helps make us sustainable to get us over. Like when we had the concert last year, it was cost neutral with not being able to sell booze or food and other things. So I'd hope this would start to turn a profit and get that group off its feet so it could get rolling without.
And our hope
hurdles.
is to do a bunch of winter tourism.
Where every time tourism does something, we're not going to come ask for money. So like this is kind of get going, right? And then you could use the money towards other things. We were with our previous economic development officer. There was already a decent plan for winter tourism and stuff along those lines that we've already started to work on. So I guess to answer your question, we won't be back for more money and we're going to use money we've made moving forward to operate.
Yeah, now that we're working with Travel Alberta too, very closely with Travel Alberta, I think we're really hoping to see good things out of this committee now.
Okay, and so any request that this is, I would assume that if approved tonight, this doesn't prerequisite obligate us to pay this every single time. And, and in the future, when there is more time and we don't have some of the administrative gaps that we're having right now, there would be more time to have a more substantial, clearer picture on what we're spending money on. I think that makes sense. However, I will say that, I think it's fair to say the council knows that we have, $1.8 to $2 million in a unrestricted surplus. The auditors were just here a couple months ago and said that that's sitting there. Whether or not you want to spend $30,000 on that event is a council decision to make. If you're not comfortable, make that council decision. What information do you require in order to make that decision, and how soon could we do that? Councilor McGregor.
So I'm comfortable making a decision. It's just, this is where we always get ourselves into trouble. Because so we've had other people that have had different knowledge, and they thought it was here and they thought it was there. And now it comes to us looking like this with no extra knowledge behind it, no ask, no presentation from, I don't even know who's on the Tourism Society, but no presentation from them to bring it. So this is the problem that we run ourselves into. And this is the gray area that always gets us into trouble or pushes us over the edge or keeps us on the right side of the tracks. So it's fine if we want to do this, just we're setting a precedent for a next society to come, and then they can say the same thing. Well, I talked to the CAO. They've had discussions with the CAO. We don't know that. I mean, lots of people could have discussions with the CAO that I would know nothing about. And so then, it's that gray fine line. So we need to do a better job at, if we thought this was already in the budget and we thought the line was there, or the society thought it was there, then we need to have clear paperwork and that kind of stuff done. So I'm fine in making the decision tonight, because I also understand that this is coming in 14 days to the town. I understand that tourism plays a role in it, along with 6 or 7 other organizations and partners that are putting money and time and effort and everything into it. It's just we can't set precedent like this. And the reason we are is because we have 2 councillors that sit on this tourism board. If we didn't have any counselors sit on this tourism board and a different society came and had discussions with the CAO and thought the money was there, we would probably have a different way that we would be dealing with this.
Agreed, 100,000,000%.
Yeah. So just it's for the public knowledge that we are doing this, because we may have some different knowledge that the 6,000 people in Slave Lake don't. So we need to be careful when we are making decisions like this and set precedent for another society. So I'm fine.
I don't disagree with you 100%.
Yeah.
I look at this as a one-off thing. First off, we've never done anything like this scale in Slave Lake before. And so I think it's fantastic that we're putting in that effort. I think after COVID, our council's talked numerous times about the fact that we want to get people out there and mental health and feeling normal again. I think this is a step in that right direction. I don't love how this has played out 100,000,000% from process point. And that would be a conversation I would have with one of the people leading the process, but that person isn't here right now, so I can't really do that. So, knowing it's 14 days away, it's not ideal, but I understand that this is a bit of a one-off, and I trust in the fact that it is the people that sit over here that are doing the work and have shared that information, and not someone that I have no idea what conversations have happened. So, I think it's a one-off. It's not perfect, but okay. Councillor Ferguson.
Just like to make a motion.
Go for it.
Be it resolved that council approves the allocation of $30,000 from unrestricted surplus that has a balance of $2,082,309 to the promotions budget.
Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. So next, administration is looking for a motion that approves
The transfer.
we should back up here. We should back up here 1 second here. One issue here. I want to strike that and do that over again. So first off, because 2 of the representatives are from the Tourism Society, they shouldn't be voting on that.
Okay, fair enough.
So we'll go back to Councillor Ferguson's motion again, that council approves the allocation of 30,000 from unrestricted surplus, and that has a balance of 2,082,3009 to the promotions budget. Any discussion on that? Please note that Councillor Gramick and Councillor Brandel are abstaining. Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Next, we make a motion that we approve an allocation of $30,000 from the promotions budget to be transferred to the Tourism Society. Good, Gary?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, motioner for that. Councillor King. Any further discussion on that one? Please note that Councillor Gramick and Councillor Brandel are abstaining. Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Okay, let's get back here. Transfer outstanding utility arrears.
We've been doing quarterly reports to you guys, regarding the outstanding utilities, anything over 90 days. We're looking at doing another transfer, anything that's, over 90 days, effective July 31st, would be transferred probably like end of August.
Okay. Normal course of business. Questions from council? Any discussion? Councillor King.
Let's make a motion, be it resolved that council directs administration to transfer utility arrears over 90 days as of July 31st, 2021 to their property taxes.
Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Next one, regional partnership. So there's terms of reference in here. So Councillor Grama, can I 5-minute break? Let's take a 5-minute break. regional partnership group that would work together potentially on projects, on advocacy and information sharing. And so right now it's looking like we'll have 5 municipalities and 5 First Nations involved, and likely be the first of its kind in Canada. We've had a couple of meetings so far. And the next step is we've been working on this terms of reference that are attached, and I circulated to council a couple of weeks ago for feedback and didn't get any back from them. The group met, the regional partnership group met again in the MD of Opportunity here last week, and this is the latest draft. It operates very similar to our tri-council in the sense that each group still has its own identity. This doesn't bind anyone to any one thing. It's more of a spirit of cooperation and working together, lays a bit of framework for the governance piece that, there would be representatives at the table. Our next thought is all the individual councils are taking this to their council for approval. And if approved, our hope is to do a signing of the protocol on September 23rd at the Legacy Center. And we're hoping to invite federal and provincial representatives because I think it'll help increase awareness about what we're doing, and especially as we move forward, probably help us with our requests that we would have to those various levels of government. So at this point tonight, I'm just hoping to get council's endorsement to sign this governance protocol at the September 23rd event. Questions, comments? Councillor McGregor.
So it was very well written. I had went through it before and liked it. The one question I did have, and I didn't send it because in the email that you sent to us, there's like 40 some people or whatever in it. So I didn't want to do like reply all. I just wondered about communication, and I don't see that here. Is there going to will you and this group and their own individual councils and nations be bringing their own communication person with them to write the notes, communicate out what happens at the meeting? How will that happen?
So
that's what I was wondering.
So the idea is that theoretically right now, this group has no administrative staff to it. We haven't put a budget. We haven't put in, we haven't put any funding towards it. There's no membership or payment requirement. The idea would be whoever hosts the meeting would supply the person that would take notes, take minutes, so on and so forth, and then they would send it out to the entire group. So example, when we tri-council initiated it, Joanna had sent out all the information. She collected all that. When we had our meeting, she took minutes. She then circulated that to the entire group. The same thing just happened with the MD of Opportunity meeting. Those notes haven't come out, but their admin staff was there to take that information and then share it out to the group. The idea is then that the individuals of that group, then it's their responsibility to share it. No different than Tri-Council. How Tri-Council works, it's up to the town of Slave Lake to share anything that the Tri-Council is doing with their residents. We don't have a special administrative or communicative person that does that for us.
Yeah, it just as communication. So who it should be communicated to and who is going to communicate to them. So that's what I just wondered, because you put that many people, as anyone knows that's been on a board with more than 10 people, communication gets mixed up just like telephone. By the time it gets to Bruce or Bryce, it'll be, Bruce, it'll be a different... It'll be a different, like what's happening. So that would be my concern, is that the communication stays the same. And there is like either some general, like what has happened at the meeting for me. Because if this is going to be an advocacy group, and then when I look to see like who is on the group and who's going to sign and that kind of stuff, some of those people have signed to have Pat and want Pat back in. And as a town of Slave Lake, we were on the opposite end. So those are kind of the communication things I'm worried about when you deal with the federal and provincial government and you put enough people in the room that will the communication, it would doesn't have to all be the same, but it's got to be somewhat the same. If you're asking and lobbying for federal and provincial money, there should be a consistent message coming from each group, each nation, that then there, like what I'm saying, so there's not 2 or 3 different things.
So realistically, how I see this working is that it would be very similar to how the Tri-Council has in the past, and we've had those conversations at the table to say, there's always going to be a lead. Somebody becomes a host, someone becomes a lead. Example, if we were advocating for Highway 88, maybe the town becomes a lead and they would be the ones that would work on that communication, that would work on the letters that then go to everyone to sign off. So before we just send something off and put our letterhead on it, we have to get approval. We have to approve what's going out. So example,
So sorry, I'm just going to interrupt. So I think that's where my struggle is already, is some of these people wanted Pat back in and have signed and want Pat back in. And as a town of Slave Lake, we didn't. So we're already starting off on not the same communication in that group.
Well, so those people signed as individuals and they've already been in trouble for using their governance. Like the councilor from High Prairie had town of High Prairie letterhead and he got in trouble for that. He was signing it as an individual. So they were.
But I guess when the Reeve and those kind of people sign, they're signing as the Reeve, they're signing as the mayor, they're signing as, like when they're signing those things. So I'm just wondering how the communication in that room is, and how is this province or this region that it's going to encompass quite big, going to get the same consistent communication in order to keep it proper for the federal and provincial government, in order to do the best job at lobbying and advocating for bigger things.
Okay, well, I think we're tying 2 things together. So first off, whatever these people do as individuals or their own person on whatever they're doing, I don't have any control over it, neither will this group.
Okay.
So the only control I have over is what this group decides or what it doesn't decide. And so by having a governance protocol, it's clear that they just can't go off and do something on their own or put our name on it and say it's okay. It has to come. There's, things have to be brought to the governance board there for discussion and debate, and it has to be, it's a consensus model, same as our Tri-Council. Whoever has, largely whoever's probably bringing up the issue will end up being the host one then that does the administrative work behind the scenes to make sure it gets done. And it would be the responsibility of the host to bring it forward to make sure that the communication going out is the same communication that everyone is getting. So, if there's a briefing note that's going to an MLA as an example, they should be sending that briefing note out to all of the members involved, which is why we got 40 people on an email. I will say that, this has never been done in Canada. And so communication is going to be an issue as we move forward there, everybody finding their lane. And, you start talking about highways and you think that might be an easy one. Everybody's got a section of highway that they want to deal with. And so, some of the discussion as an example that we had last meeting was that maybe instead of us all focusing on one chunk of highway, maybe what we do as a group is to do the work to understand that here's the different zones that the province put highways in, and we have the lowest percentage of anybody else that's out there. And maybe what our lobby is that we want this equal percentages, same as everyone else. Or maybe if everyone's equal, maybe our thing is to show, well, our weight of traffic or our degree of traffic going through in our area is no different, or is quite substantially different. And so there should be a substantially different funding model. And so I guess what we see as the power of the group is to be able to bring, instead of trying to get the province to focus on a dot this big, we start to get them to focus on a dot that big. And, I think with Tri-Council, one of the things that we have recognized, we're not always going to win in this thing, and we're definitely not going to win equally. And that's some of the discussions that we've had with the group so far. But as long as we don't lose, we don't think that that's a bad thing. So I think for us, from the Tri-Council perspective, it's going to work very similar. It's just going to be more people, which is going to bring its own challenges, but it's also going to bring its own opportunities.
So then when it says who should be communicated to, then so if MD of Opportunity was the host, so when they're done these meeting minutes, will this now go to all of Slave Lake, all of Sucker Creek,
No.
all of Driftpot,
It would go to that entity, it would go to the town of Slave Lake. And if the town was, because with respect, we're all individual communities, nations, organizations. I do not want a different community communicating to my residents about something that I am working on. So I think there's always a responsibility of the elected officials that are part of that community to send out their own communication to their residents. It is the host's job to provide that information to the entity to decide how they're going to distribute it.
And then we'll be able to give that to our communications coordinator and he'll be able to put it on
Totally.
all of our social medias, all of our emails, like whoever needs to have it, we'll make sure that everybody knows what's going on after each meeting in each individual community.
Yeah, and I also see this as whoever our representatives end up being on this governance protocol as we move forward. Right now, we've kind of allocated myself and Councillor Gramlich. If that changes in the future, it doesn't really matter who the people is, but this would be part of our committee updates. And we would bring it just like everything else and say, hey, this is what we're working on. This is what we're doing. And then prior to meetings that are coming up, we might have a discussion. It'd be an agenda item on our council meetings to say, hey, this is something we want to bring to the group. But there's a process. I can't just like willy-nilly show up at the group and be like, hey, I want to talk about this today. Like, you know, you need to bring a report. It has to be thought out. You have to share that information and so on.
And then it will go on to being a committee for the next group of counselors under this. And then you'll appoint some people because we don't have it on here yet.
Right.
Right. Okay. But that's kind of the goal is to get it as a
the goal is
committee.
to get the protocol done, basically to say, okay, you know, and largely what this, you know, largely what the protocol says is that we see the benefit of working together. There has to be some structure as to how that works. And what they're actually going to work on, what they're going to advocate for, what projects they are going to do will be determined moving forward. I actually see a bit of a strategic planning thing going on after the protocol is signed, some information sharing. I talked about it at the last meeting. I think it would be good even for, you know, one of the things I found very eye-opening was actually how a First Nation operated was very different than how a municipality operated. And so I don't think everybody in the room is on the same page of that either way. And so I said, you know, one of the first meetings that should happen should be a discussion about, you know, everybody takes 10, 15 minutes and says, this is our municipality. This is how big we are. This is how it works. These are our things that we're concerned about. It's not a debate. It's not a discussion. It's just get to know the people in the room and kind of how they work and what their priorities are. And then the next one will start to take a little bit more strategic approach and take those kind of balloons and bubbles that we've kind of threw on the wall and say, okay, well, which ones are unique to all of us, right? Start having discussions about that and moving them forward. And maybe if it is highways, okay, you know, as an example, you start to say, okay, how do we deal with this from a regional approach and not a specific approach? Because, for example, the MD of Opportunity would say, hey, like I'm concerned about the highway between Peerless and Trout. It's the only gravel road that's out there. We got ambulances breaking down with axles out there. This is a bigger priority than you guys having a struggle to get to the golf course. And we would turn around and say, well, yeah, well, like we got a big struggle over here though, because we got fire trucks that are ripping out the bottom, going over bridges and doing whatever. So, you know, we're going to have to figure those things out, how we support each other without, you know, negatively affecting our neighbor as well. So it's going to be a steep learning curve, but I think just the ability to have those discussions, to get to know each other, to work together, and to bring a larger spotlight to this region, I think is going to be advantageous for us, because as we move along and move forward, you know, the province is not going to be more fortuitous in handing out funds. They're not going to be more accommodating and helping us do all of our things because they've got their own problems to do. So I think if we can bring a louder voice, I think we have a huge, massive edge there. So
I mean, and it was very well written and laid out, like that first one that you gave us. It was easy to follow. It kept everybody in their lane. It talked about who would chair the meetings, how you would get terminated, how you will come to a consensus. So I was good with it. My only one I was going to ask was just how about the communication, and I've asked it now. So that's good. I think it's great.
And I think communication is going to be tricky, and it's going to be different for everyone because they're, you know, that individual group is going to have to figure out the best mechanism. I think in our corner, the mechanism is going to be our representatives have a responsibility through our committee of whole to share that. We bring minutes back. I think we also have a responsibility to be strategic that when we go to those meetings, we have discussion topics. So we're going to have to include items on our agenda to say, okay, hey, what are we taking to the table? What's on there? What's our area of concern? Which theoretically is exactly how every committee that we have should operate, right? Any further discussion, Councillor Brandel?
Just a quick question about the name. Is it just going to be called regional partnership? forever.
There's, the name is being finalized here behind the scenes. And so, I'm trying to remember what it is. Let me see. Oh, I don't have it on me. No, because we changed it. So one of the things, so we had engaged Bill Sutherland. Bill Sutherland helped us through a bunch of the tri-council stuff when we first started. He was the ones that kind of drafted the terms of reference for the tri-council. And so originally they had something that had the word Slave Lake in it because it was focused on the lake. But some of our partners are up in the MD of Opportunity and Big Stone and really aren't connected to the lake. And so we had some discussions about that. And I want to say it's like something around northern Alberta Central something. We tried, it's four letters. We debated this the last thing. I can't remember. So it was being circulated. I'll send it out tomorrow because I totally should have had that. I'm not the in imagination guy, so I told them I didn't really care what we ended up on. Yeah, but I want to say it's like north central Alberta NCA something, elected leaders or something like that. Yeah, and so anyways, that piece will go in there before we sign. That's the only, because we don't want to call it this big long thing. I'm looking for a motion from council to endorse signing of the regional governance protocol. Councillor Ferguson.
Just, it might be helpful to provide a little more clarity around the cost sharing. So a lot of First Nations, they have members that reside on the First Nation and members that reside off. And so it might be a little helpful to provide some clarity around that clause in there so that there's no confusion in the future when you're talking about proportionate cost sharing.
Okay. I'll take that back. The way it is, I think that piece was around basically how are people that go and attend are compensated. And so basically it's written in there that theoretically, if the town of Slave Lake sends representatives, the town of Slave Lake is responsible for the cost of those representatives to go, no different than any other one. So the town of Slave Lake is not on the hook to pay for anyone else there. And if we host, then we're responsible for those costs, and those people, we're not billing back those costs to the other people. So that was the issue on cost.
So will you or whoever have this ready to go for the new council in October with what kind of it looks like and who's supposed to sit on it and what their role is? Kind of like, we have a little blurb for each thing, like the library, the CEC, like we have a blurb about what each of those committees do, just so that, new people coming forward will know kind of if they want to put their name on that forward, like we should have that sort of ready. Hey? Yeah.
So I can connect with Joanna there once this piece is done to create a little blurb on what that piece would look like. And what has to go in there for sure. And then of course, any new elected person that comes in, it would be in their best interest to read some of the minutes and the notes and talk to people that are still there or talk to people that aren't there to get the information to do the best job possible. Okay. Any last questions, comments? So I'm looking for a motion for council to approve the town of Slave Lake endorsing and signing off on the regional governance protocol. Councillor Busk makes that motion. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Sam, bylaw number 12, 2021, page 21 in our package.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Sam, feel free to use Cole's notes for the next 3 reports.
I was planning on making it nice and short.
Appreciate that.
No problem. So the first one is just for first reading to set the date for the public hearing. And this is for the town of Slave Lake to rezone the old fire hall.
Any discussion, Councillor Busk?
Make a motion that bylaw 12/2021 to the land use district map of the land use bylaw 22/2007 by redistricting lot 3, block 3, plat 688 NY from M1 light industrial district to I institutional district receive first reading. The required public hearing be scheduled for September 7th, 2021.
Discussion. Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Jumping to page 27 in our package. We don't really usually go over this because this is the first reading. This application was brought to us by an outside agency. So basically somebody has come forward and said, hey, we want to change your bylaw. And so rather than council debate the merits of that ahead of time, we have a public hearing in which information can be brought and we debate it at that point. So at this point, all I would ask for is a motion from council. Councillor King.
I'll make a motion that bylaw 13/2021 to amend the land use district map of the downtown and Main Street area plan by redistricting block 3, lot 3, block 1, plan 892-1201 from C2 secondary commercial district to UV urban village district, receive first reading and the required public hearing be scheduled for September 7th, 2021.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to page 35 of our package. Along the exact same lines as the last one.
So Tyler, I just want to make a note here that I made a mistake in the motion and it should be the land use map of the land use bylaw, not of the downtown plan for this
The land
particular
use
report.
map of the land use bylaw.
Mhm.
Councillor King.
I'll make a motion that bylaw 14/2021 to amend the land use district map of the land use bylaw and Main Street area plan by redistricting lot 3, block 1, plan 892-1201 from C2 secondary commercial district to UV urban village district, receive first reading and the required public hearing be scheduled for September 7th, 2021.
Well, just a friendly amendment that we need to delete the words Main Street area plan.
Agreed.
Yes.
Okay, we got it. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Okay, so usually these are our light, easy meetings where we now get into the meat and potatoes of our meeting for council committee updates. That being said, because we haven't met for a month, there's a number of business things going on here and these are a little bit longer than normal. On the plus side, though, I don't expect a ton of committee minutes updates because they don't meet much in the summer, but let's go through them as quickly as possible. Intermunicipal committee hasn't met. Watershed.
Hasn't met.
District Chamber of Commerce hasn't met. Housing.
Hasn't met.
Health.
We're in September.
Tourism.
But he knows what's going on in tourism. It's the all-in event.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Library.
September.
Naming advisory.
Haven't met.
Community futures.
Haven't met.
CEC.
September.
Homeless coalition.
So I have an update here. So the Homeless Coalition met July 29th. A lot of this is in this week's paper, but I'll hash some of it out here. So we do need a plan placed for a heating center for the winter months. So if there's an agency or an organization willing to fill this need, please reach out. We had a discussion about busing. So if we are unable to get something set up for this winter in regards to a homeless shelter or MAT program, we hope to have a contingency plan in place to help transport people to areas where there are adequate resources so that we don't risk a possible death due to exposure. And it's becoming hard for us to get traction without some seed funding. However, we've touched base with a few organizations behind the scenes to see if they would be able to help with this so we can get some grant funding onto the MAT program. We desperately need an organization that is qualified and willing to facilitate such a program. This is probably the single biggest challenge at the moment for the MAT program. Organizations that could successfully facilitate it are few and far in between. So if you're such an organization and willing to facilitate such a crucial need in the community, then again, please reach out. Lastly, our next meeting is August 12th at 1:30 here at the town office. So we invite all those who are interested to attend.
Okay. Questions, comments? As I see none, MPC.
We met quickly the other week and we just did approved a subdivision of a lot.
Okay. Any questions, comments? SDAB hasn't had one. Waste.
Okay. So we had a meeting here July 15th. So we had Associated Engineering attend to go through some of the cell lifespans. So long story short, based off of projected volumes, we will potentially need to add another landfill cell in 2023. We'll also be reviewing some further budget items at our next meeting, specifically pertaining to our rate bylaw, operations budget, capital budget, and reserves. Adding another cell is roughly projected at $1 million, so we need to have an in-depth financial conversation.
Yeah, so, having that meeting there, it was a 4-hour landfill meeting.
Yes.
That we went through a number of items. And so I appreciate the MD staff who's been helping bring some of that information forward. There is some flexibility on that 2023 date, as well as we need to make sure that there hasn't been a lot of, when it comes to the philosophy of how the landfill should run and how the budget should be done and how reserves should be handled and that sort of stuff. A lot of it, when the MD staff had changed, suddenly evaporated. So council or board members were trying to provide some of that clarity as we move forward. But it's a good opportunity to look at the budget as a whole, as well as planning as a whole, reserve planning as a whole. And so the meeting was actually really good. We didn't make any decisions at that because we wanted some more pieces. And so we have a meeting coming up here in the next couple of weeks there to dig into it more.
Who's the current cell?
The current cell was built in 2012. So
Fire, right?
totally.
We got a grant for it or something.
No, we didn't get a grant. So basically what happens is you have this big chunk of, this is actually kind of interesting. I'll show you guys real quick. This is worth it.
It is pretty interesting.
While you're
Oh,
doing
no.
getting
Oh, no.
prepped,
Sharpies.
has that
Brown? Sure, brown works.
date come up a lot? Like, I thought it was 27 before we needed a new cell.
Depending on the volume that's coming based off projected volume. So our volumes are up a little bit right now. So it's based off of current volumes.
So basically you have this big square where you put the landfill in. This is your pit. You fill this pit and away you go. The thing is that, and you have a maximum height to how you can fill this pit. It has to be lined, it has to be played. Because rainwater goes in, we have to collect this water, because it's not just rainwater anymore.
Leachate
it has
and all
to be
that.
disposed of. So the idea is for cost effective point, you start by just dealing with the corner. We dig that up. So let's call it cell A, B, C, D, E. So you start with B, C, D. Pretend that these lines actually connected so that it wouldn't look so stupid. But the point is we start with A. And we start filling that cell up. Now, once we get to a certain height, though, it becomes to C. So you have to have a certain grade to this mountain of trash as you go with it. So now all of a sudden to expand it, I may be at all of a sudden I'm at 90% of capacity. But then when I go dig out the next piece, we start building up trash, you can change the slope and all of a sudden you can go higher. Because I have more surface area over here, it's not so steep on the sides. I can now take that slope on a 3-dimensional. When the pit's only this big, my slope is like this. But as I make it bigger, my slope becomes like that. And so at the end of the day, what we have to keep doing is adding pieces. And once we add that piece, all of a sudden that cell, instead of it being 90%, becomes 60%. And you keep doing this until you eventually fill the whole thing. And so the point is that right now, let's say we've got basically this area dug up, it's getting to a point where they're saying, hey, based on volumes and what's going on, theoretically, possibly in the next 2 years, you would have to put in another cell. Another cell would be, let's dig out this corner, it's $1 million and away we go. But we have got approvals to change the height, we've got approvals to change slopes and stuff in the past. We're working on different compaction pieces there that they think, and looking at some of the holes that existed and stuff that's already dig up, and we play with that a little bit, that they think they could probably extend that 2023. So this is initial engineering report. It changes every time that they do one. The last one that was done, I think was say 3 years ago, and now this is the most updated one that says this is the information that exists today. And so our biggest asset is just to delay this 1 million, because what happened after the fire is we had to go build this big, huge chunk of it. Cost us $1.4 million to deal with all the debris after the fire, right? We're digging all these basements is where it all went to there. And so went out and spent the $1.4 million, and all the way along, we were lobbying to say, like, this happened because of the fire. Like, the amount should be forgiven, we should grant for this, it should be in the recovery. We fought. And about 2015, I want to say 2016, they basically said, pound sand too bad, so sad, you're on the hook for $1.4 million. Now, they've just kind of been carrying it and had to deal with it. So at the time, the discussion was, do we use all of our reserves for it, pay it off, or do we debt debenture it? And so the philosophy at the time was say, well, to pay for something today that everybody is going to benefit for the next 10 years, let's debt debenture it, take it as an operating piece, and away we went. So that's what we did. We financed it, I want to say in 2017. I want to say it comes off the books in 2026. Off the top of my head. So the idea is that if we can extend 2023 to 2026, we already have a philosophy for dealing with this. And theoretically, they are paying based on borrowing 1.4, but the next one is actually about 950 for strong really quick. So that's one piece of it. Another piece of it is, you know, some of our equipment is coming off that we have paid for. Do we now use reserves to pay for a piece of equipment, or do we simply finance it and take a payment because that makes more sense? Because you build it in the actual operational cost of what it costs you to operate every year versus just taking it all at once. So at 10,000 feet, that's what the group is working on right now to say, okay, what's the best scenario here as we move forward? We're not panicked yet, I don't think. I'm not panicked yet. But we just need to make sure that we're not just making quick decisions, but having the sound basis of all the information to make an informed decision. So, and administration then, because they've been behind the scenes having to try and figure out from the past how things worked, has been quite frustrating with them, but we're all kind of getting on the same page now. Yeah, it's pretty good artwork.
Mr. Colin.
That's a Picasso, all right. So sorry, any more questions on landfill? Well, there'll be lots to share from our next meeting there, I'm sure. Airport.
So the next meeting is tomorrow. However, several of us went and toured the new fence. So everything is fully operational. Initial feedback is that users and tenants are very much a fan of it. This helps to properly secure the airport, helps keep trespassers out, and helps keep wildlife off the runway. So I've heard since the fence is fully operational that there's been no incidences of deer on the runway, whereas prior to that, there was somewhere in the teens so far this year. So it's doing its job.
Okay. Legacy, we have a meeting coming up the first part of September, starting to see more bookings happening there and bookings filling up the fall, which is fantastic. Behind the scenes, the daycare is constricting their space and we're working on a new lease with them. As per our discussions that we had previously, they're going to forgive some space in an effort to save their monthly rent. They've been hit hard due to COVID and the fact that they've been limited on the amount of capacity that they could have. Another one that has substantially hurt them is that they were using they were basically government subsidized on the $25 a day daycare. And now not having that has changed the usage of the demand of people that are wanting to go into it. So there's also the obvious things that COVID has changed some family dynamics and not everybody's running back to go back to work. And so less people are looking for childcare as well. So they wanted a rent reduction, but we're willing to give it some space to do that. And so we just signed a new lease for some additional funds with WJS, who is in there. And we are currently in negotiations with another group to take over the daycare space that looks quite promising. And so things are looking good. So I'll have more to support, more to report come the first part of September. But it's nice to see that building getting open and getting used again.
They can go back into full capacity now?
The daycare? Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And largely the space that they're giving up is administrative space. And so it doesn't change the capacity of the amount of children that could go to the daycare. Any questions? Nothing. Protective services. Emergency management is nothing. I need to flip back. Too many papers here. Northern Alberta Mayors and Reeds Caucus hasn't met. Northern Alberta elected leaders meets in September. Motion to accept the committee update, verbal committee updates as presented. Thank you, Councillor Brandel. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Management task list is here on page. I don't think it's in here.
And my apologies, there is no management task list update this time.
Okay.
If
Let's
you have
skip.
any questions, we can try to answer them.
I don't think we have any at this point.
Okay.
We'll keep going. Correspondence. So one on page 42 is the gas tax fund. The good news that came in there, that was a little bit more than we anticipated, and we look forward to budget having that discussion. 2018-19 emergency preparedness grant. This is something that the town has applied for in the past. I want to say this is $5,000 that we get every year. Information in there that we got it again. Minister of Justice and Solicitor General's response in regards to our letter that we sent to the ministry about focus your efforts on justice and the justice program, not so much, and resourcing that properly so that justice comes quicker for those that are accused and those that are accusing. And not focus your efforts on a police force. And they basically said, hey, we're looking into it. A report's coming. Thank you for your input. So I don't really have nothing more to add to that because I don't think nothing has changed from our standpoint, and it doesn't look like much is changing from theirs. Lastly, the Slave Lake Native Friendship Center sent me an email here at the end of July that they are hoping to host their provincial annual general meetings. So friendship centers across Alberta would come here for the meeting. As part of the prerequisite to be able to say, hey, we want to be considered as a host, they need a letter of support from the community saying, yeah, this is good for a community, we want to have it. And so they're asking for a letter of support for that. Any questions, comments, concerns? Councillor Brandel?
Not a concern, just I will make a motion that we write a letter of support, as long as they're not asking for monetary support.
No. Well, okay, we're sending a letter of support in principle that the town council, or that the town of Slave Lake is excited for our Slave Lake Native Friendship Center to host their provincial annual general meeting.
Yes. Is that what they're asking for?
Yeah.
I don't know, because I didn't get that from this email. I didn't know what they were asking for support for, whether it's for.
She said a letter of support.
Annual or the 50th anniversary. Which one is it for? The AGM?
They're combining it.
They're combining it.
Doesn't it say to present to them?
No.
So they have to go, what Barb instructed, because basically Barb called me and so what she had said is that at this meeting that's coming up, in order to be considered a host, one of the things is that you have to have a letter of support from your community. And I apologize, like we've done letters of support for a number of organizations in the past when they're hosting something.
I'm just wondering, I have no problem giving a letter of support, but my question was, what was it for? Like, were they looking for a letter of support for the AGM or for the 50th anniversary?
My understanding was it was both, but I'll clarify.
That's all.
The celebrations during that time. So I think they're combining the both.
That's what I understood. It's their 50th thing and they're going to do it at the AGM.
And it's bringing 100 delegates to town, so I'm for it.
So here's my next point about gray area. Elected to elected. The board writes the letter to the elected officials, right? Like, that's why they have a board. That's why people have a board, is so that their board asks for that. Because I was confused. I'm still confused. I think we're all confused. Like, we're requesting a letter of support from your town council to present to our provincial AGM.
Okay.
What does that mean? You got a personal phone call, but like, I didn't know. I thought it was like for someone to present, like to present at the provincial AGM. I thought it was a letter of support that someone was going to come and present. I didn't, you know how it's like, we're requesting a letter of support from your town council to present to our provincial AGM. So I thought you were going to have to go and present something.
No, Barb would be presenting it. So this would be no different than
when the Legion writes for a letter of support and it comes from the Legion board, and when other
minor
people
baseball
write
wants to hire.
and they come from minor baseball board, and then, yeah, everything comes from the board that runs them.
Okay.
Okay, so just another gray area, board to board, elected.
Noted. Okay.
I'm good as long as that's what it's for.
Yeah, so like we're writing a letter of support saying that this would be basically a good, the context of the letter would be that this is a good thing for our community. We're excited to have them host. This doesn't commit us to anything administratively or monetary at this time.
Perfect.
Okay, so if that's the intention of the letter of support, any motion is on the floor. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Okay. Lastly, Mayor's Corner. Yeah, behind the scenes, honestly, you know, I got to pump this up a little bit more because this regional partnership is a huge thing. I honestly think it has a ton of benefit for our region. I think it is unheard of and unprecedented in Canada. The fact that we're doing it here, I think, is fantastic. And I think that there's huge opportunity and huge potential to shine a larger light on Northern Alberta. And I think that's in our best interest. So I'm excited to see where that can go. I recognize that it is going to be challenged. You know, there's a lot of voices with a lot of dynamic personalities with a lot of different things. And so, you know, that's why I've said to the group, you know, education to start out with, to, you know, that information sharing is going to be key. And so a lot of the group is ready to like work on the meat and potatoes. But, you know, from being on council for a number of years, I used to be the same way, and I recognize the benefit of taking the time to put in a strong foundation for it. And so good to see that they were buying into that at the end of the meeting, and I'm excited to see where it goes. We had a meeting with Minister Nixon today. Minister Nixon is in charge of environment and parks. And I think from council perspective, we have some concerns about the bird observatory, we have concerns about the beach and, you know, the golf course and some of the things that are going on there. But mostly, you know, we have this giant chunk of land that has some of the best access on the East Basin to Slave Lake, which is a huge tourist attraction for us. And the town of Slave Lake doesn't really have any control or insight onto what they're doing with that and how that's managed. And so the discussion was largely around, okay, you know, here's these points of some of these problems that we have, but on a bigger scale, like what is your plan with the park as you move forward? And so the ministry committed to getting the bird observatory question cleared up, because it sounds like it's cleared up and then it sounds like it's not cleared up. And so we got to get that cleared up. And so that discussion will be happening before the end of the month. And then we'll be meeting with ADM Shane Schreiber before the end of September to have a bigger, better, deeper discussion about the future of the park, the role of the town in it, and the opportunities that exist to bring people here and augment what they're doing with what we're doing, so we're working in the same direction. So I look forward to that meeting that we said that we were going to have in February, but it's apparently coming now, so that's great. The other thing, obviously, I'm excited for the All In event. I think it's huge. Get people out there, you know, the buzz that was created with the block party before, to literally have hundreds and hundreds of people out there connecting, meeting, seeing each other. You know, I think everybody is definitely in a mood where they want to get out of their basement again and see the rest of the world and feel normal. I think it's a great opportunity to do it. The fact that it's even bigger than that, we have multiple events, it's going on for days. I think it's a huge opportunity too, when we talk about economic development and showing our community and showcasing what's going on here and in this region. You know, we have a huge opportunity to attract people from outside that region. I also think there's a huge opportunity. If you guys haven't been in Big Fish Bay lately, you should go through there, because it's like a little city. But there literally has to be 1,200 people in there every weekend that, you know, for 6 months of the year are never there. And so, you know, we're going to see a lot of those people coming through. A lot of those people are spending money in our community. And so to enhance and promote things like that, I just see a lot of wins in the economic development world that are working, and it's great to see. So I touched on this previously, but I will tell you too, from the economic side, economy out there, just keep hearing nothing but great things about the trajectory of economic investment in this region over the coming months. And I think it's going to be a good place to live, work, play, and do business. So it's great to see things paying off. Lastly, nomination day is obviously coming soon here. We're just over a month away. And the election buzz out there is crazy. And I find it very exciting. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that stuff. With that, we are still not done, but we're into our closed session. Closed session, because we're not supposed to be using camera anymore. So I guess I look for a motion to hold a closed session. Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried.